we've known for a while that the Ukrainians have the capacity. They've been talking about having a drone that reaches 1,000 kilometers. And so this is certainly, I would say, significant because, yes, they've gone to various parts of Western Russia. They've hit Moscow before, but they've never gone as far as Tartarstan, which is another 14 hours by train from Moscow. So it is a huge distance that they've managed to cover. And if they can target the oil refineries in Tartarstan and logically further back towards Ukraine, then it becomes that much harder for Russia because they have been hitting oil refineries. I think they've taken out 10% of Russia's oil capacity so far. If they can keep on doing that, then Russia is going to have to move its oil refineries even further east, which becomes much harder for its war effort. So it is certainly significant, I would say. Whether they can keep on doing it remains to be seen. I think really the idea is that it would force the Russians to put even more air defense in Russia away from the front line, and therefore they could target Russian forces in Ukraine and also Crimea as well. That probably is the plan, more so than trying to hit every oil refinery this side of the Urals. But who knows? They have played an absolute blinder in regards to this, so we'll see.
Російська система війни, кожен, хто залучений до цієї агресії, всі вони повинні відчувати реально, що агресія їм просто так не минеться. Зло повинно втрачати. І втрачати.
It is a relatively effective tactic, but it doesn't beat high armaments in terms of missiles. It doesn't beat artillery. And bearing in mind how long it's taken the Western governments, at least this year and before that, to procrastinate their way to a solution, Ukraine has very little alternative options at the moment. We simply don't know when Ukraine is going to get new weapons. Yes, the British and the French provided Storm Shadows. That's excellent, but Ukraine is running out. We're still waiting on Olaf Scholz in Germany to start talking about Taurus missiles, and the Americans haven't provided HIMARS. So the Ukrainians are having to use what they have, and that is not a viable alternative in terms of heavy artillery, in terms of missiles. Ukraine is at a critical effort. I think Russia in this week has taken 400 square kilometers. It's the most it's taken this year, probably even last year. Who knows? They are building up, I think, towards an offensive in the summer, because when the mud stops in Ukraine, they will move their tanks. And we saw the biggest tank deployment only yesterday. The Ukrainians thankfully managed to wipe out, I think, half of them. So it is certainly certainly okay. Yes, the Americans talk a good game, but they haven't provided Ukraine with the weapons it needs. They're still procrastinating in terms of the $61 billion because the Republican Party seems enthralled with Vladimir Putin, and other Western governments also have not provided anywhere near the sufficient amounts that they should have done. Germany is the obvious culprit and always gets blamed, but other countries like France have simply not kept up either. There's an awful lot of the soldiers' families having to buy their own weaponry and other equipment as well. They're talking about having two new armies. Sergei Shoigu, as soon as Putin was re-elected in his farcical election process, talks about having two new armies. That's about 300,000 soldiers. 150,000 are going to be conscripted as well. So yes, Putin is in this for the long haul, and Ukraine is existential to a great extent for him. He has to win this war because he's put Russia in a difficult situation. And this is also one of the reasons why the West needs to support Ukraine, because if Ukraine can fight Russia to a standstill, what will Putin be able to say to his people? That he's killed who knows how many Russian men, how many young Russian men have died in this war, or been maimed or injured, or following PTSD, what have you. It's going to be tragic. And if Ukraine can be given the weapons to at the very least fight Putin to a standstill, and as Zelensky said to CNN, if they can go back to the borders of 2022, then what can Putin show for this? And this is something that I think Western governments need to realize in terms of supporting Ukraine to win this war. And it doesn't necessarily need to be going back to the borders of 1992. That's probably unlikely for now. It just needs to be fighting Russia to a standstill, which is possible. you know, we hear from the Kremlin that it's basically piracy, that they stand to lose $300 billion, which is half of their welfare fund, because Putin decided to put it in Western banks for whatever reason. But you know, so I think that naturally he will be upset by this, especially if Russian money, or the interest of Russian loan money, is going towards the Ukrainian war effort. Then naturally he will feel upset. And the ICC as well, there is always that possibility that Putin will have to choose where he visits very carefully, because we've seen in the past that when he wanted to go to the BRICS in South Africa, the South Africans turned him down. Lula in Brazil has said he wouldn't be arrested, and then 5 minutes later he said, actually, sorry, he would, if he went to Brazil. So Putin is going to have to choose where he visits very carefully, and I think this is always going to be a way for him as well.
Стреляют из автомата. Стреляют по толпе. Какие-то люди стреляют. Пока есть.
We can expect certainly more torture. One person apparently has died while being detained, or during their time in briefly in prison. We can expect that the Russians will keep on talking about how it's the Ukrainians. They will try and find a way to link it to Ukraine, and even if they don't find a way to link it to Ukraine, they will still link it to Ukraine regardless.
Главное сейчас не дать тем, кто стоит за этой кровавой бойней, совершить новые преступления. Что касается расследования этого преступления и результатов оперативно-розыскных действий, то в настоящее время можно сказать следующее. Все 4 непосредственных исполнителей теракта, все те, кто стрелял, убивал людей, найдены и задержаны. Они пытались скрыться и двигались в сторону Украины, где, по предварительным данным, для них с украинской стороны было подготовлено окно для перехода государственной границы. Всего задержано 11 человек.
Очевидно, і Путін, і інші покидьки просто намагаються звалити все це на когось іншого. У них завжди однакові методи, це вже було, і підірвані будинки були, і розстріли, і вибухи, і завжди вони звинувачують інших.
So we can expect that eventually they will make an announcement that Ukraine is obviously the main perpetrator behind the Crocus City Hall, that it was led by the SBU, it was led by Bogdanov, it was led by whoever it is that they want to find. Possibly the Azov battalion may reappear again, who knows. But either way, the narrative is going to be that it's Ukraine involved, and they will not provide any evidence for this, because they won't have any evidence for it, but it doesn't matter,